Okay, we'll need to get started. I know Morgan and Terry are live streaming. I just don't know about, and of course Savannah. I don't know about Hillary. I haven't heard from you, Miss Hillary. Hillary, of course, I'll talk to you in taxes. Text me, Hillary, and let me know what exams you have passed. And Jonathan, Clayton, and Cole, have any of you passed advance? You will pass it before the day is over, whether Sarah's here or not. I'll finish that test with you. I took it yesterday. It's just like the first pre-test. It's not even nothing like the retest. It's just the pre-test. So we'll finish that pre-test and take you up to computers and get you certified. And I got to turn that in, I don't know by when, to Charleston, West Virginia. Now, I hadn't heard from my RS man in about a month. And I got to wondering, he usually floods me with emails. And then he came back on first of this week. He's back to work. He didn't get to work during the government shutdown. And he's a key IRS man that has a lot of VITA sites all over West Virginia. It coordinates them and controls them. All right. How cold was it at somebody's home this morning? You don't know.
It was warm in the house. I think it was 4 o'clock. It was like 30 degrees.
Well, how much?
3 degrees.
Well, about right. It was about 5 this morning, my home. So up here, I called my sister in Michigan and one in Nebraska. And of course, they've had the snow. The one in Michigan still had 6 or 7 inches, but 14 below with a wind chill of 25. And then the sister in Nebraska, near between Lincoln and Omaha, she had, I think, 15 below with a wind chill of 30, with the grass barely covered with snow, but had the cold weather. The last count I looked at, there was 6 deaths due to the cold weather, where people froze to death. I don't know. If it's below 0, you don't have to get out, don't get out. But they got the post offices and everything shut down in some of these Midwest states. It's that cold, everything shut down. So we got lucky, I suppose. Anybody have classes yesterday? I came up here yesterday for office hours. I should have went back. Well, I was supposed to be here at 12, but between 11 and 12, it poured the snow and the road was slick on both sides, all the way. And quick as I got here, 15 minutes later, the sun came out, quit snowing, the roads cleared up. So anyhow, just have to be careful when you're out in it. Okay, we're on chapter 3, test coming up in the near future. Chapter 3, we've looked at, just a little bit looked at. And I've not looked at PowerPoint, so I'm going to use PowerPoint the first part of the period and discuss some of these terms in chapter 3. The high-low method, predetermined overhead rate, that's the 2 key items. Now, chapter 2, the 2 key items were journal entries and a manufacturing statement. So, now I know I've got PowerPoint. That's managerial. I think next year they're going to be changing all these rooms to what I've got. I know, I think Mr. or Dr. Barnes finally went over. And I think Coach And Dr. Sneed has played with it a little bit, but they'll have to change over next year. Those rooms are getting just bad, the old system. Now, the one that hadn't done anything to it yet, and he's going to change to it, Dr. Albert. He resists anything to do with computers, I guess. But I was telling principal's class, and I probably told you all before, how computers have changed our language. Windows, that's something we used to look out of. A chip was something out in the cow pasture. Hardware, something I bought at a hardware store. Software, something women wore to bed at night. What are some other correlations there? A byte, B-Y-T-E, and it's a different kind of byte than what we do with our teeth. Cole, you're a computer genius. What are some other?
Really the thing that your circuits and stuff.
Your what?
Circuits.
Okay. And server, because we know a server is somebody in a restaurant. Now it's hardware, and so forth. Things have changed. Okay, let's look at this one just a little bit. Your product cost is materials and labor is always actual. No problem there. But your overhead, it has to end up being actual. It was in chapter 2. But from here on out, it's going to be predetermined. All right? And the matching principle adjusts not related activities and so on. Now, predetermined overhead rate, and I told you that this is your budgeted overhead divided by something. And I told you that something can be direct labor hours. So here you're going to charge, for each direct labor hour, you're going to charge overhead $20 an hour. Now that could be direct labor cost, that could be machine hours, it could be some other activity level. Relationship between overhead and the activity, volume, hours, machine hours, and here are some of those other things: purchase orders, setups, and materials handling time, which we hardly ever use those. We will probably use these 3. The activity level, the denominator, here's machine hours. So you'd charge $7.50 per machine hour. Here's machine hours. Under this case, you'd charge $12.60 per machine hour. Now this is variable, of course, and this is fixed. Variable and fixed. Applying variable overhead, actual activity level, predetermined overhead rate equals overhead applied. And here's your 4,300 hours times 750. All right, gives us 32,250. So here's what we're doing: 4,300 hours times 750 an hour is 32,250. All right, then we debit work in process and we credit variable factory overhead. All right, that is the estimated. That's what goes into work in process. We know we debit work in process and we credit materials. We debit work in process and we credit wages payable. Now we're going to debit work in process and credit overhead. The 3 things has to go into work in process. Applying fixed overhead for 1 month, same thing, 4,300 hours times 1260 is equal to 54,180. And debit your work in process and credit. Now, managerial does not break it down into variable and fixed. They just go with one flat overhead. Now, if we record actual overhead and we record applied overhead, hopefully they're equal, but they hardly ever are. Here, if we made a compound entry, now this is recording actual overhead for 1 month overhead account. Here is what we've been debiting in chapter 2, and with credit various accounts. Accumulated depreciation, wages payable, whatever, indirect materials. Now over here, okay, now add up my debits, and that's going to give us 87 what? Now add up my credits. Eight. Now take the difference between my debit and credits. Anybody got a calculator handy? Cole, you don't have a calculator?
Well, I have my phone.
Oh. All right. Monique and Jonathan's helping us out here. The difference is how much? I knew it was less than 1,000. Some numbers I don't try to subtract in my head when they're just arranged that way. If I had one under the other one, I would. 925. All right. Now we would have to credit overhead 925 and debit cost of goods sold for 925. Now here they're just giving you another example. This for the whole year. Fixed and applied. What's the difference there, folks? What's different than 220 and 260? And that's over applied. If your credit side is the biggest, it's over applied. If your debit side is the biggest, it's under applied. All right. So what do? We got to get rid of that 40,000. All right, you could debit cost of goods sold for 40 and credit factory overhead for 40. Oh, this is if it's under applied. Sorry, this is over applied. You would, if it's over applied, your credit cost of goods sold and debit factory overhead. Now that's if it's insignificant. Is 40,000 insignificant? Depends on how big the company is. But now if it's significant, you may have to break it down between cost of goods sold, finished goods, and work in process. Disposing of overhead different. Immaterial, cost of goods sold. If it's material, prorate to these three. How do you prorate it? Let's say this was, let's go simple. Let's say 100,000, 50,000. All right, 150,000. Now, if overhead is 40,000, all right, maybe I'll make that easier and take off the one. Now, if I add these up, what do I get? If I add up work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold, 150, 50, what do I get? 200. All right. Now, 100 over 200 is what fraction? 1/2 or 50%. Now, 50 over 200 is what fraction? And we'd have to allocate 20,000 to work and process, 5,000, wait a minute, 10,000 to finished goods and 10,000 to cost of goods sold. All right, we'll work on that. Capacity levels. Capacity measures volume. You know, some companies may have normal, expected, and practical. I don't know why they would ever have in theory. Now, theoretical capacity, all productions are operating perfectly. You have no machinery work down. You have no holiday downtime. So this is just not practical. Practical makes sense. All right. Take theoretical reduced by holidays, downtime, startup time, and you got practical capacity. And you may have overapplied, underapplied overhead, or low production cost. Expected capacity is for the upcoming period. It helps you with the budget, helps you with the cost, and you're going to have immaterial over underapplied overhead. Alternative capacity levels. Now here's the mixed cost that we were talking about. Now in your household expenses, which none of you are married, all right, but you live in a household. Well, you're not married, are you? I guess the closest one to being married to you would be John. She is the one that hits you. At least by the time you graduate. You got one more year, John? No. 2 more years? Oh, sure, definitely. Maybe about 2 years. All right. Anyhow, marriage is not bad, Jonathan, as long as you let them have their way. You don't fuss at them, let them do anything they want to. Well, hey, but that way you get along with them. Okay, mixed cost. If you had a household, that is called semi-variable cost. So we know your electric bill might be $20 a month, even if you didn't turn on a light bulb. That's the fixed portion. But do you have any idea, Jonathan, how much electric bill your mom and dad pays?
No, but I know that I've heard them say like they have a setup where they pay.
They pay on the budget.
That the budget's like where you have to set amount.
Set amount every month, that's a budget, but they still, you get the real amount too. Jonathan, you have any idea what your parents' electric bill is? Cole?
I have no idea.
Clayton? No idea? Monique? All right. I'm just going to guess that up here in West Virginia, and as cold as it is, you know, especially these winter months, you know, most of your parents probably pay $200 a month. And that depends if they have electric heat. They have baseboard heat, it's higher than that. Does anybody here have gas heat? You have a gas furnace or what?
We don't use it, but we have it. But it's more.
You just have backup gas heat in a fireplace or something.
Yeah,
That's backup. That'd be expensive too if you burn it 24 hours a day.
it is more.
It's expensive. They fill mine. I only get mine filled up one time. It's that expensive. And usually when they come and fill it up and they leave me a bill, I call them, fuss at them. Now I get my bill down because I say your rate last year and going rates around, so I'll get them down. If they're trying to charge me $3 a unit, I'll get them down to $2.50. That's after I've already put it in. All right, so mixed cost is variable and fixed. We know the fixed cost is a straight line. And we know the variable cost, not a horizontal line, but what kind of line do you call that, you math people? In economics, I call it a supply and demand line, but in economics, I'd cross it and find equilibrium, but this is not economic. So anyhow, you see fixed cost is horizontal flat. And I guess variable cost is vertical leaning. Leaning vertical, we'll name it ourselves. All right, now I told you didn't have to know this, y is equal to a plus bx. But it's okay if you do. Y is your total cost. A is your fixed portion. All right, now if your fixed portion was $10,000 and your variable cost was $2.50 a unit, and your activity base to which Y is related, we produced 1,000 units. Okay, what is my Y, my total cost? What's Y, my total cost? That's easy. You've already got 10. All right, what is $2.50 times 1,000? Times 1,000. Is that 2,500? All right, add that to 10,000 you got. Total cost. Now, we could very well do it my way and call Y total cost. And A, we could call fixed cost. And B, we can call variable cost times our units. So we can very well make up our own formula. Total cost equals fixed cost plus variable cost times the units. Okay? We will not do this. Now, I had to do this one time in my life. Who has had statistics yet? Are you already finished with statistics? Business. Did you have a least squares or regression analysis in there? All right, who's had calculus? Or pre-cal? I don't know if it's a pre-cal or not. You had pre-cal? But you've never seen regression analysis. Nobody's seen it, not it. All right, I learned it, I think, in statistics in college. All right, we had to take a computer program, and that's when you had this whole room full of big equipment. Your cell phone can do more now. And we had to punch cards. We had to run them through a card reader and then get a printout of what our results might be. All right. I had a class. I forget what the name of the class was. It was something to do with economics, though. And we had to prove something with a computer. But I chose this method. And what I did, I got information from all school systems in Virginia. It was about 100, counting counties and city schools. And I took out the dropout rate in those counties, and I took the money spent on students in those counties, and I took regression analysis and proved, and it, you know, it's a hypothesis, I guess, but it stands to reason, but I had to prove it with correlation analysis here. I called it correlation analysis, but I had to prove it that the less money a county spent on students, the higher the dropout. Well, that makes sense. If you spend a lot of money on the students in those schools, they've got music programs and probably the sports, and they've got everything that keeps students interested in school. Well, I proved that when I turned it into an instructor. He was amazed and he liked it, and I didn't have to touch a computer because I used that method. But I use it today? Not at all. Even with the formula, I probably have trouble using it today. But it's a pretty big formula. So we sticking with the high-low method that we talked about a little bit the other day. Now the high-low, we know we take the high and we take the low and we take the difference and we take the high cost and the difference, and we know that we divide dollars by units. And dollars by units gave us 30 cents a unit, variable cost per unit. Now, our fixed cost was 800. Our variable cost is 30 cents times how many machine hours? 9,000. All right, so that gave us all right, what is 30 cents times 9,000, folks? What's 30 cents times 9,000? All right, so if we take 2,700, all right, 2,700 takes the place here. So $2,700. Now add that to 800. Does that give you TC, total cost, or Y? We won't do regression analysis. I don't see this formula here. Okay, now we're also going to talk about budgets. Now, a budget, we may prepare a budget for a certain factory. We're going to produce 100,000 units, okay? We're going to produce 100,000 units, but let's say we can only produce 90, or we can produce 110. So we need to prepare a budget for 90 and 100 and 110. That's called a flexible budget by using different units. Separate mixed cost into variable and fixed. Determine the A plus BX cost formula. All right, now here is a flexible budget. I don't know how well you can see that. All right, we've got a flexible budget here. 50,000 is our target, but we may go over. We may go under. Now, I want you to look at the fixed part. The fixed part of salaries, well, what happens to salaries? No matter what you produce, what happens to salaries? Look up here. What happens, Clayton? Huh? All right, what happens to depreciation, Jonathan? And coal, what happens to utilities? I don't know about that, but it shows here that they do, but you'd have to be on a budget. And other, it looks like stays the same. All right, now up here is what changes, is the variable. from the high to the low to the middle. Now, if you go down here, factory overhead rate per machine hour. All right, your total. If we were divided by machine hour, which number is the best down here? Monica, what number down here at the bottom is the best number? Is it 1575 or is it 840? Sure, anytime you can get that down. So if we're producing 75,000 units, you still got the same cost. Or 40,000 units, you still got the same fixed cost. So that is economics of scale. Ford Motor Company started the assembly line. The more you produce, the less your fixed cost per unit is. Your variable cost still may be $100 a unit, but your fixed cost per unit goes down, 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 the more you produce. Now, I mentioned these two terms the other day. All right, absorption or variable. We got to follow GAAP. We have cost of goods sold, selling, administrative expenses. Now, I showed you that the other day. That is sales minus cost of goods sold gives you gross profit minus selling and administrative gives you net income. So don't have any problem with absorption costing. I want you to do, of course, one of these for homework. This is the old method. In other words, financial accounting. In other words, accounting 201 and 202, which is principles. So you've already got this under your belt. So you got to learn this other half a little bit. And here we take sales minus variable cost gives us contribution margin minus fixed cost gives us net income. You'll see a lot of this. Folks, that is all the PowerPoints on this chapter. So it's short, it's sweet. Now, in chapter 3, did I give you any assignments for today? What problem? Monique, what problem for today?
11, 12, 13.
All right. You people who are here today, 4 of you, the other 50%, we're supposed to look at 11, 12, 13, and 14 today. We probably won't get to them because of the short period. All right. But for Tuesday, if you haven't read this chapter, do so. All right, I'm going to give you some other problems. Now, these, one's predetermined overhead rate, one is a flexible budget, one is the high-low method. These are not hard, folks. I'm counting on you to do your homework. I had 18 present this morning out of 25, which I was proud of them. But out of those 18, only 2 had their homework. That's about 11%. All right. So here is your new assignment, 15, 18, 22, 25. And I'm going to let you go early because I got to eat some lunch before taxes. So it gives you about a 20-minute break before taxes instead of 10.